Alrighty, good morning class. Good day, I mean. Welcome to our first asynchronous recorded lecture. For today, I will be discussing lab exercise number 9, which is muscle and nerve tissues. Let me just go to my PowerPoint. Alright, so first we have to understand that for muscle tissues, the main function is for movement and contraction. Now, when we say movement, it is not only the voluntary movement or the movements that we can control, but even movements of the internal organs. And the muscles do this primarily by contraction. Okay, so the involuntary movements are done by contraction. Unlike connective tissues where the fibers or the protein fibers are non-living, the fibers found in muscle tissues are living cells, and their length can actually run the entire length of the muscle. So in epithelial, in connective tissues, the cells are very minute. But for the cells of the muscle tissue, they can actually be very, very long as the muscle is. Okay, and here in this representative image, this entire muscle can be divided into several bundles, and each bundle can be further divided into several fibers. And each muscle fiber is a muscle cell. Okay, there are actually three types of muscle tissues. The first is skeletal, the second is cardiac, and the third is smooth muscle. Here is a representative picture of each type of muscle, but nonetheless, I will be discussing them one by one. Skeletal muscles are muscles which are attached to a skeleton, thus the name skeletal muscle, and is responsible for our body movements. It is mainly responsible for voluntary movements, meaning movements that we can control. All right, so if we want to scratch our back, we can just raise our hand and then reach over our back. So that's a voluntary movement. If you want to kick or jump or run, that's a type of voluntary movement, movements that we can control. Because of this, skeletal muscles are also known as striated voluntary muscles because under the microscope, they appear to have striations or stripes. And in these stripes are the structures for contraction. No? So again, the striations are where the units for contraction are found. Under the microscope, we can see that there are distinguishing features for skeletal muscles. Mainly, they appear large fiber-like cells with fine cross stripes which contain many nuclei per cell. So let's first focus our attention on this representative image here, no? On this diagram. Very long, thick-looking, striated, and there are multiple nuclei per cell. Right? And then that is um, reflected here in our histologic slide. We see a bundle here. It has striations or stripes, and multiple nuclei are found in each cell. Okay? And usually, the location of the nucleus is at the periphery or nasa gilid ng mga muscle fibers. Alright? They are peripheral. Next are cardiac muscles, which are only found in the heart. Okay, thus the name cardiac. They are also called striated but involuntary muscle. Again, skeletal muscles are also called striated voluntary, but cardiac muscles are called striated involuntary muscles. Mainly because we cannot control the movement of our hearts, right? They are striated, but the striations appear less distinct and the movements are subconsciously controlled. Here is a representative image of our cardiac muscles, no? And if we look at it, we will notice that the skeletal muscles are longer compared to the cardiac muscles, which are shorter. And unlike the skeletal muscles, which are multinucleated, cardiac muscles only have a single nuclei. There are also important features found only in cardiac muscles, no? And the first is the branching appearance of the cells. So here is one muscle fiber, but there is a connection to the next one another connection to the third one, another connection to the fourth one. Unlike the skeletal muscles, which are not branched or which are not interconnected. The second unique aspect of cardiac muscles is the presence of what we call intercalated discs. So these intercalated discs are the end-to-end fusion of cardiac muscle fibers, okay? So in simpler terms, intercalated discs act like a super glue which connects one cardiac cell to another. On the other hand, or on top of that, aside from just gluing cells together, they also act as a bridge so that electricity or stimulus can pass through each cardiac cell, allowing the entire heart to move as a unit. Tagalogin ko. Intercalated discs para silang mighty bond that connects each cell to each other. On top of that, they also function as a bridge na nag-aalaw ng electrical impulse from one cardiac muscle to move to another para ang heart ay magkaroon ng rhythm, magkaroon ng unified movement as seen in the GIF above. Okay? That's the function of the intercalated discs. Remember, because this will be asked in your examinations. So here we can see the intercalated discs. Again, they are anchoring structures containing gap junctions. If you do not know what gap junctions are, I believe they have been discussed in cell anatomy. You can just read briefly in that chapter of your book series. And cardiac muscles are faintly or less distinctly striated. Again, they are branching, they are mononucleated, allowing it to form a functional network or allowing the entire heart to function as a unit. Alrighty? Next are smooth muscles, which has no striations, thus the name smooth, and they are involuntary in nature. They are usually found in our hollow organs, such as the digestive organs, the blood vessels, the eyes, and the skin. So let me explain briefly the location. No? So in order for food to be moved from, let's say, the esophagus to the stomach to the intestines and then the anus, food should be moved, right? There should be movement. And this movement is achieved by the smooth muscles contraction called peristalsis. Okay? So, because of that continuous contraction and then relaxation on the other end, food is being squeezed from one end to another end. Okay? In the blood vessels, smooth muscles are also found when the blood vessels need to constrict to control blood flow, no? Kino-constrict niya or nililimit niya yung diameter ng blood vessels. Also, they are found in the eyes, in our eyes. So, do you ever feel like when you're watching too much Netflix, your eye just moves on its own? So, that's the smooth muscle moving, right? And also found in our skin. Smooth muscles are the reason why we get goosebumps. Bakit tumataas yung balahibo natin? It's because of the presence of smooth muscles. Now, histologically, they are composed of long, thread-like cells, also known as spindle shape, which only means na unlike the skeletal and the cardiac muscles, which are fiber-like, the smooth muscles are tapered, meaning malaki sila sa gitna, they are big at the center, then they go smaller and smaller towards the end, as shown in this diagram. Big at the center, smaller, and pointed towards the end. Okay? And they are arranged in parallel with one another. Also, they are mononucleated and the nuclei are centrally located. Okay? So, that's a very distinct from skeletal and also cardiac muscles. And the most important part, there are no striations, no? So as a summary of all three types of muscles, we showed you here a table. So the contraction of skeletal is voluntary, we can control it. But for cardiac and smooth muscles, we cannot control the movement of these muscles. Striations are found in the skeletal and cardiac muscles, but for cardiac, they are less distinct or they are faint. But smooth have no striations at all. Nuclei, multinucleated for skeletal, and they are located at the periphery. As for cardiac and smooth muscles, they are single or mononucleated. And then for smooth muscles, centrally located. Of course, for the locations, skeletal muscles are found attached to the skeleton. Cardiac muscles is only found in the heart, and smooth muscles are found in the hollow organs of the digestive organs, the eyes, the skin. Okay? And the special features, I already mentioned this, skeletal muscles are big, large fiber-like appearing with really obvious striations. And what is found in the striations? The unit for contraction. For cardiac muscles, they are branching and the presence of intercalated discs. What are intercalated discs for? They act as a glue, which puts cardiac muscles together and as a bridge so that electrical impulse can be passed on from one cell to another, allowing it to function as a unit. And lastly, smooth muscles, they appear spindle-like, big at the center, going smaller and smaller towards the end. Okay, and here are representative photos of those descriptions. I hope that's clear. It's very easy. It's a very short chapter in your book. Let's go to nerve tissues. Nerve tissues are mainly found in the brain, in the spinal cord, and also our nerves. Okay, their main function is for the transmission of stimuli or message, right? So before we are able to do something or before we're able to control our voluntary muscles, there should be a command coming from the brain, and this command is propagated and transmitted through our nerve tissues. In our nervous system, there are actually two basic types of cells. The first is neurons, which are the impulse conducting cells, and the second are the neuroglia or the support cells. Let's first discuss the neurons. So here is a representative image of one single neuron. No? They are large cells with nucleated bodies. This is the nucleus. This is the body of the of the neuron. And there are projections. Projections here near the body and projections here appearing like a tail. And those are called axons and dendrites. Okay? So let's first talk about the axon. The axon is a long, slender projection. Kita nyo, no? Para siyang buntot. It looks like a tail of the nerve cell or neuron that conducts electrical impulse. Remember this, away from the neuron cell body or soma. So again, the cell body is also called soma. And the axon's job is to transmit impulses away from the body, away from the soma, towards the axon terminal, and then papunta to another neuron. Okay? On the other hand, dendrites are branched, as you can see here. The axon is a single projection, but the dendrites are branched. Many branches here, right? They are branched protoplasmic extensions of the nerve body, and the function is to receive. If the axon's function is to send, then the dendrite's function is to receive stimulation from other nerve cells and then process it in the cell body or soma before sending it to the axon. Okay? Now, I still remember my Anafi professor telling us, if you do not get a joke easily, then you might have long dendrites, right? Kasi ang tagal bago ma-process ng nerve cells mo yung information. So kayo ba yan na mahaba ang dendrites? So I think it would be better to have shorter dendrites and longer axons, right? There. Para lang you'll be able to remember. So if you notice in this image, we saw that there is a cell body also known as soma. We have here the dendrites, the nucleus of the soma, and then the axon, which is this long single projection. And then there is what we call Schwann cells. No, the Schwann cells are the orange-looking dots here along the axon, and the yellow-looking structure is the myelin sheath. Okay, and then in between each myelin sheath and Schwann cells are what we call nodes of Ranvier. Here, nodes of Ranvier. Okay? Sila yung mga gaps in between. Okay? So, there is a special function for myelin sheath. So the myelin sheath protects the nerves from other electrical impulses, and it speeds up the time it takes for an impulse to traverse an axon. Okay, so we know that our brain sends multiple stimuli, right? Kasi the brain controls, let's say, our breathing, it controls our heart, it controls our muscle movement, it controls our mouth as I speak right now, controls my voice, it controls even my digestion. So basically, there are multiple stimuli being fired all at the same time. And in order for the brain to function properly, it should receive the right impulses only. And what allows it to receive the right impulse? The myelin sheath. So in order for the nerves to transfer the right information, it should be myelinated. There should be myelin, okay? And aside from protecting it from other impulses, it also allows a fast conduction of impulse, no? So can you just imagine if the transmission of impulse from the brain to the heart would be slow? It would take several seconds before each heartbeat to happen. But observe the heart. It continues to beat in rhythm. So what controls that? The impulses. The sped up transmission of impulses because of the myelin sheath. So what happens is impulse, you can see my pointer here, impulse from the nerve or from the nuclei or cell body, instead of going down the entire length or instead of traveling the entire length, what it does is it jumps from one node to another. Kaya mabilis yung impulse, no? Because it jumps. It does not travel all the way down. It jumps from one node to another. So that's what happens. And if a cell or if a neuron is unmyelinated, or if there is no myelin sheath, no Schwann cells, then it will have to travel down the entire length of the nerve. So it will be slower. Okay? So why did I show this picture? Because I wanted to show you how myelin sheath is produced. So myelin sheath is produced by Schwann cells. Schwann cells are also called neurilema. So I want you to focus on this image first. So the orange structure here is the axon. Then it is embraced first by a Schwann cell. Okay? Ayan yung nucleus ng Schwann cell natin. And then, as time goes by, it will continue to produce myelin sheath until it looks like this. No? There is a thick layer of myelin protecting the axon. And since the nodes of Ranvier are unmyelinated, as you can see here, no, in this image, as I'm pointing here, there is a gap here, another gap here, another gap here, no. Since the nodes of Ranvier are unmyelinated, the electrical impulse then jumps from one node to another, allowing the impulse to reach the axon terminals faster. Unlike if it is unmyelinated, bababa pa siyang ganyan. Super tagal. But because it jumps, the impulse reaches the terminals so much faster. And we call this jumping as saltatory conduction. Okay? Do not forget, saltatory conduction. How about neuroglia? Neuroglia naman are small cells that support and surround the neurons and has physical and biochemical functions. In fact, the Schwann cells is also a neuroglia. Supporting lang siya, right? It's not really a part of the neuron, but it just supports the neuron. So, here is an image of the neuroglial cells. They appear red, tiny dots, and if this is the axon, then there are also Schwann cells there. So they maintain homeostasis, they form myelin, and then also provide support and protection for our neurons. Kasi remember, our neurons are non-regenerative. If they become damaged, they die permanently. So they need additional protection and support. Now, here are the slides that you need in order to complete your lab exercise. So this is the image for the skeletal muscle. Here is the image for your cardiac muscles, branching. However, we cannot appreciate too much the intercalated discs here, no? I think the light was too exposed. Here is a smooth muscle, tapered, centrally located nuclei, parallel to one another. And here is a spinal cord smear. However, here the magnification is too low. We're not able to appreciate the neurons individually. Alrighty? So that's it for our discussion of muscle and nerve tissues. I hope you learned something. If there are any questions, you can reach me through my email. Thank you and God bless.